Jamison family disappeared on Thursday, October 8th, 2009. When a person disappears without a trace, often the most critical information is hidden in their actions and words from the days before they vanished. The Jamison family's last known whereabouts may hold the clues to what happened to them. A 6-year-old girl and her free-spirited parents vanish in the backcountry of Oklahoma.
It was terrifying to know that they might be lost in those woods.
I had the feeling from the very first moment that it was foul play.
We thought they were either, one, lost on that mountain, or two, it was a murder-suicide.
A police investigation reveals bizarre questions, but no answers.
I know she's told the neighbors around here she's a witch.
In this area, you find that much money, automatically you start to think about drugs.
Then she put the gun to his head and said, "You need to go."
This isn't a random crime. This is something that was premeditated.
It was like not knowing. I mean, what happened to my kids?
They didn't deserve this.
On the day before the Jamisons disappear, they load their pickup truck and drive 30 miles to Oklahoma's Panola Mountain.
They were looking for property. They were looking to go buy 40 acres of land in a very rural area.
The Jamisons had actually learned about the land on the internet.
The parcel of land is situated in a remote area near an abandoned oil well.
It is really forested area. There's a lot of cliffs and ravines. That's what they like, though. They liked nature.
Those who know Bobby and Sherilyn Jamison say the couple looked at Panola Mountain as a fresh start, a new beginning for them and their young daughter.
They like to go look at land and imagine what if and fantasize about, building whatever, their dream businesses, homes, whatever.
Nikki Shenold has been Sherilyn Jamison's closest friend for more than 10 years.
She used to say a lot, you have to stand for something. I don't care what you stand for, but you have to stand for something. When she believed in something, she believed in it with her whole heart.
Friends and family say that when Sherilyn met Bobby Jamison in the summer of 2002, she knew he was the man for her.
Sherilyn decided right then and there that she liked him and she was interested. Bobby was a very gentle man. He was a good man. He didn't want to do anybody wrong.
They fell in love and got married in July of 2004. Later that summer, the Jamisons have a baby girl and name her Madison.
Madison was my son's, I guess, best gift in his whole life.
Where are you going, Tissy? Looky, there you are on TV.
She was just, beautiful child, and her and I were best friends.
Madison.
For Bobby and Sherilyn, moving to Panola Mountain is the next step in building a simpler life. They're excited to join the small community living there, people who prize independence and self-sufficiency.
There's very few people that live up there. Even the ones that do have the bare minimum needs.
In order to have electricity, you have to really have a generator. Some people have septic systems, some people don't. It's a pretty rustic way of life.
When it comes to being off the grid, they're as close as you probably could be in this area.
On the morning the Jamisons start to explore the mountain where they hope to make their new home, they become lost in a maze of dirt roads. They run into one of the handful of people living up there and ask for directions.
He's out there working, he sees them come up. They're talking about buying land in that area. They're asking him questions about, okay, how do you build on a place, How do you do the things that you need to do to be able to live in this area?
Bobby and Sherilyn get directions to the plot of land they're considering and decide to return the next day. The following morning, they drive back up the mountain, looking forward to seeing the place where they would live out their dreams.
I think they wanted to get away from everybody and be able to enjoy life on their own, not to have to answer to anybody.
It's pretty desolate, but I think desolate at that point was what they were looking for. They were just kind of looking to start anew and kind of get away from mainstream.
But the Jamisons' outing comes to an unexpected and mysterious end. 8 days later, hunters on four-wheelers find a locked truck parked on a dirt road near the top of Panola Mountain.
They peeked in the window and they saw a dog, and the dog was not doing so well. It had been locked in that truck for multiple days.
There wasn't any food for the dog. I mean, she was a survivor. She was a survivor to live through that.
There is no sign of the Jamisons anywhere on the hilltop. The Latimer County Sheriff's Office is called.
The call just came in that there's an abandoned truck up there. We broke the glass, got the dog out of there. We started to do an inventory on the vehicle to try to find out who they were.
When he began to find things in there, he knew that it was something definitely was wrong. They had cell phones in their truck, and their billfolds were there. Her purse was there. It was like they had just disappeared.
Because their coats, phones, and money are all left behind, police believe that Bobby and Sherilyn, along with their 6-year-old daughter, Madison, must be lost nearby in the woods.
After we started looking through everything, we were figuring, okay, they're up here.
It would be quite easy for somebody to go out there and get bit by a snake and to not be able to get back to the truck and just to not be able to find your way around.
Police conduct an immediate search of the area surrounding the truck.
I had 5 or 6 deputies up there. Started calling out their names once we figured out who they were, trying to get some type of reply from them.
Rugged terrain makes the search doubly challenging.
You can get lost in the woods up there very easily unless you know where you're going. Because if you get in the midst of the trees, you can't see, very far ahead.
For law enforcement, time is of the essence.
There was a child missing. It was getting towards, middle, end of October. The nights were getting colder, and they didn't have their jackets with them because those were left in the truck.
We knew that they had been there 8 to 9 days, and you're getting on that timeline there to where, the chances of making it, we're at that point now.
Why hadn't anyone reported that the Jamison family had been missing for 8 days? The few people that saw their truck guessed that it belonged to a work crew.
There's a lot of wells up in that area, oil wells, gas wells. So a lot of people thought it was just people with an oil field that had come in.
Also, the Jamisons were a very private family, and it wasn't unusual for them to hunker down for several days or longer without speaking to friends or family members.
They had a habit of going out of town for extended periods of time and not really letting anybody know.
We could go a year and not talk and pick up the phone and act as if no time had gone by. That's just the relationship that we had. There's a lot of reasons why no one was alarmed.
Bobby and Sherilyn had also just pulled 6-year-old Madison out of school in preparation for homeschooling her.
The school didn't realize that, Madison wasn't there because she had been taken out.
If it wasn't for the hunters coming down and telling the man that lived close to him about the vehicle, it could have been that much longer.
The sheriff's men on Panola Mountain realized that by now, the Jamisons could be anywhere. They used the family's cell phones to help reconstruct their last known movements.
As we checked the GPS from the phone, we had found out that they didn't spend the majority of the time parked there.
GPS coordinates lead police up a nearby hill, where they find footprints.
The 6-year-old's footprints were there, and that was obvious and easy to identify.
We were able to follow their footprints as well as follow the GPS on the camera up to a rock.
They determined that the Jamisons spend about 15 or 20 minutes up the hill from their truck. And remarkably, they find an eerie memento of the family's time on the hill.
The cell phone had a picture on it of Madison. They'd actually taken the picture on a small bluff that was just north of the location, maybe just a couple hundred yards.
It's the last picture that we have of Madison.
It appears to police that after taking the photo, the Jamisons return to their truck and start to leave. What happened next is shrouded in mystery. Then, while scouring the cab for more clues, a deputy sheriff makes a stunning discovery.
He said, "I've got something to tell you, and I think you need to come up here." And I said, "Okay, what's going on?" And he told me, he said, "Hey, there is a substantial amount of money in this vehicle."
A bank bag hidden beneath the driver's seat contains $32,000 in cash.
I wondered why. Why is all this money in here?
Anytime any large amount of cash is found in a vehicle, it raises a lot of red flags.
So at that moment, I said, okay, get everybody away, tape it off as if it was a crime scene. Don't know, what's going on yet, but tape it off.
We really weren't sure why they disappeared.
Coming up, evidence points to a violent event in the Jamisons' disappearance.
I think that they were probably forced out at gunpoint. I mean, why would you struggle if someone has a gun to you?
While looking at a plot of land on Oklahoma's Panola Mountain, Bobby and Sherilyn Jamison and their 6-year-old daughter Madison have disappeared. Investigators find the family's truck abandoned in the Oklahoma backcountry.
A pickup sitting down there, with all of their goods and the dog locked inside the car was very suspicious.
Investigators are confounded by their most recent discovery, a hidden bank bag containing $32,000 in cash.
It's very unlikely that they would leave the vehicle there and lock their cell phones and their wallets and leave all of that in the car on their own accord, but we really didn't know.
Investigators are also baffled that the family dog was apparently left to die in the cab of the truck.
Madison, once she had that puppy, never went anywhere without the puppy.
It just doesn't make any sense, because that was Madison's friend, and she would have screamed and hollered if he'd left the dog in the car.
The whole fact that the dog was in the truck locked up and they're nowhere to be found tells me that they got out of the truck in a hurry.
Even the cell phone picture of 6-year-old Madison prompts speculation among some of their friends.
I don't think her parents took that picture. I think that somebody else that she did not know took that picture. She had her arms out like this and her hand was over in a weird position. She was looking off. It wasn't a real smile. She looked very uncomfortable to me. Very uncomfortable.
Police theorized that the Jamisons were in their truck heading back down the mountain when they were interrupted.
It seemed to me like they were leaving, and that someone came up that one-way road and they stopped. Maybe they knew them, maybe not well. They stopped, talked to the person. From there, obviously, I don't know what happened.
But investigators find no signs of a struggle at the scene of the truck.
Signs of a struggle for life or death would be violent. That's not going to be some small tussle.
There was no blood found on the vehicle. There was no broken glass.
You're obviously looking for disturbance on the ground. When people fight, there's clothes that's shredded, there's things that fall out of pockets. Whenever it's that violent, something would be left to show that there was something that happened there.
Still, friends and family think the scene suggests that the Jamisons left against their will.
I think that they were probably forced out at gunpoint. I mean, why would you struggle if someone has a gun to you?
Hopeful for a lead, investigators process every item found in the truck.
At this point, there were so many different things that led us in different directions. We weren't sure if they were lost. We weren't sure if they were abducted.
Then, buried in the clutter filling the cab, they stumble upon something they never expected. An 11-page letter written from Cheryl Lynn to her husband, brimming with hostility.
She was lashing out big time in this letter to Bobby.
It was just a hate and discontent. The years of fighting. She felt that he wanted to be a loner and didn't really need a family. And other than that, I mean, it was just a lot of hate.
Investigators learn that in recent months, there were serious stresses in the Jamisons' marriage.
We learned from their family members that they were having problems. We had learned from the letter that they were talking about getting divorced.
They had been looking at selling their house and kind of moving away to get away from that to make things better.
Much of the strain dates back to 2003, when Bobby was involved in a serious auto accident.
Bobby was driving his truck in 2003, and he had a wreck. He was coming around a curve, which is a blind curve in the road, and this lady hit him from one side, and another lady hit him from the other side.
Since the accident, Bobby suffered from chronic pain and was unable to work.
It is very hard for him to get up out of bed even. Medicine wasn't really helping relieve the pain.
It made it hard for him to do things around the home. And I think that the pain every day, the chronic pain, really put a toll on his spirits. And I think he became depressed, and it made things more difficult in the marriage.
The letter forces investigators to consider a violent scenario in the Jamisons' disappearance. Their concerns heighten when family members tell them that a pistol belonging to Cheryl Lynn Jamison cannot be found.
We didn't know about the .22 pistol until that moment, so we said, no, we haven't found a pistol. And they told us, okay, well, usually she carries this pistol in the vehicle.
Investigators search the Jamisons' truck and house thoroughly. When they find no pistol, they begin to fear the worst.
We got a pistol missing. We have a hate letter here. We're starting to get to point toward maybe murder-suicide. We thought to ourselves that maybe it was her that had killed them.
Coming up, leads in the Jamisons' disappearance go from confusing to downright bizarre.
Bobby had asked him, okay, is there a special bullet that I can buy to kill these spirits?
Bobby and Cheryl Lynn Jamison and their 6-year-old daughter Madison have been missing for nearly 2 days. The possibility of foul play comes to the forefront of the investigation as police learn more about a troubled marriage and Cheryl Lynn's missing pistol.
A pistol being missing is important. We were told by family members that she carried the pistol everywhere. Maybe this was a murder-suicide.
If a murder-suicide had occurred, the Jamisons' bodies would still be somewhere on Panola Mountain. On October 17th, less than 24 hours after their truck was found, law enforcement begins a massive search.
The emergency management in Latimer County got a hold of all the fire departments in this area, EMS, forestry. Local people started showing up with horses, four-wheelers.
They didn't know where to go, where to start looking. You know, so they just took teams and went up there.
All of the resources of Latimer County are brought to bear. Helicopters, fixed-wing aircraft, tracking dogs, teams of horses and mule, and hundreds of personnel all assist in the search effort. The rough terrain makes everything twice as hard.
It's a triple canopy, a lot of woods, a lot of rocks, almost all of it straight uphill, and very, very tough conditions to try to do a search in.
It was also hazardous and dangerous because a lot of the people didn't know the woods and they could get lost.
Walking up those mountains and trying to keep a straight line and everybody intact is very, very hard to do in that type of terrain.
Tracking dogs are also brought up to Panola Mountain to aid in the search effort.
There were dogs that we brought up to the scene, both cadaver dogs and air scent dogs, to try to locate the Jamison family.
We used some articles from the vehicle to let the dogs take a sniff of it, try to get familiar with their scent.
The dogs start at the truck and fan outward through the surrounding terrain.
They were very interested at the top of the mountain as well as around the truck. They didn't really want to leave that area.
Although acres of woods surround the open area at the top of Panola Mountain, the dogs don't venture off the plateau. They alert on a nearby water tank, signaling investigators to the possible presence of human remains.
The tank was full of water, and the dogs seemed to have hit on it quite a bit. Obviously, we were thinking to ourselves, okay, they might be dead bodies in this tank.
The tank is drained and examined, but nothing is found inside. Search teams scour the mountainside, but find no bodies.
I find it impossible for you to be able to hide your own body. Yes, you may be able to hide one or two that you'd obviously killed, but to hide your own body would be nearly impossible.
That conclusion brings a measure of relief to the Jamisons' friends and family, who have trouble believing Sherilyn capable of murder.
I don't think there was any way, even if Sherilyn was depressed, that she would shoot Bobby. I know they had a lot of arguments and they had fights about things, but she truly loved Bobby and Bobby loved her.
To help spread the word about the Jamisons, missing posters are created and distributed around southeastern Oklahoma.
There was effort made to get information out to the public and to let them know that they were missing.
We took the picture of Madison off of their cell phone that they had taken up on the mountain. We put her age, height, her hair, date of birth. We used the driver's license of Sherilyn and Bobby, and we done the same for them.
So anybody that walked by, you could see, hey, you know, I didn't know them, or, you know, I saw them the other day.
Although their focus shifts away from murder-suicide, investigators continue to uncover strange details about the Jamisons' lives. They discover that Bobby, and especially Sherilyn, had a strong interest in spirituality.
Sherilyn had some beliefs that were not commonly shared with other people, and I think she had a tendency to exaggerate them and go a little bit overboard with them.
In the weeks prior to their disappearance, the Jamisons attended prayer meetings conducted by a local preacher, who was later interviewed by investigators.
He was talking about them seeing spirits, that they came to him and was talking to him about seeing spirits.
The preacher tells investigators that Sherilyn said that angels were coming into their home in the form of children and interacting with her 6-year-old daughter.
I know that Sherilyn had said that Madison was talking to people that had died, and one of them was named Emily. I don't think it was someone dead. I think it was an imaginary being that she, you know, had, you know, to cope with some of the things that were going on in her life. You know, it's very hard for a small child to be somewhere where there's arguments going on.
The preacher also tells police that Bobby Jamison believed that he saw spirits on the roof of their Lakeside Eufaula home. It's a disturbing revelation.
It was 3 or 4 spirits that were giving them trouble and mostly talking about them being on the roof. We had also found out from him that Bobby had asked him, okay, is there a special bullet that I can buy to kill these spirits?
that makes me sad. I mean, I don't even know. I don't even know what that would be about.
Friends and family are not clear on what Bobby may have been going through to explain such unusual behavior.
It's a mystery to me. I don't know where that came from, you know, and I don't know the minister. I don't know the church. I've never been there before. It just doesn't sound like him to say something like that.
According to police, Sherilyn had also spray-painted odd phrases on signs and buildings in their neighborhood, including the storage container they had sitting on their lakefront property.
Sherilyn had a cat that had passed away, and she believed that it had been poisoned, and that raised a lot of issues within the neighborhood.
The graffiti said something along the lines of witches don't like their cats being killed.
I know she's told the neighbors around here she's a witch, and come on in for some witch's brew. And I think it scared people off, but I think she just didn't want to be bothered by people.
Sherilyn used to tell me, if you have a problem with somebody, make them think you're crazy. The crazier they think you are, the more they'll leave you alone. It's true, it worked. You spray paint some crazy stuff on there and people think you are crazy. I don't think anybody bothered them after that.
For investigators, the clues and odd revelations about the Jamisons' lives are not adding up to a coherent whole.
When you do an investigation, one of the ways that most of us were taught, you actually get rid of each scenario that could have happened. So a process of elimination on it. And in this case, we haven't been able to completely eliminate anything.
This has been a very bizarre thing. I mean, there are so many pieces to this puzzle, and every day you find a new piece, something else comes up.
After the Jamisons have been missing for 7 days, a lead finally surfaces that appears to turn the investigation around. Law enforcement learns that the Jamison home is outfitted with surveillance cameras and that recordings were made up to the time of the family's disappearance.
Both cameras were pointed toward the driveway of the residence. We have the footage of their home surveillance that morning of them getting ready and preparing to come up to the mountain.
In the eerie-looking surveillance video recorded on the day they disappeared, the Jamisons are seen packing their truck.
The family was found going in and out of the home multiple times, back and forth to the car in somewhat of a trance-like state.
We found it odd that they had to go back and forth so many times. I would say safely each one of them, without it being an exaggeration, went 20 times back and forth. They never acknowledged each other as they were walking back and forth from the vehicle. Never acknowledged each other. It's like they were the only persons in the world.
Speculating that the Jamisons' behavior may indicate an involvement with drugs, Sheriff Beecham shows the recording to experts.
I actually had psychologists look at the footage of them leaving their house from their security cameras, trying to get an idea of what type of people they thought they were. It made me and the psychologists feel that they were on some type of drug at that time.
If the Jamisons were involved with drugs, in Latimer County, that usually means one thing.
We automatically assume here in southeastern Oklahoma, if you're on a drug, that it's methamphetamine because we have such a problem with it here.
Coming up, could a violent incident a month before the Jamisons disappeared be the key to solving the case?
Then she put the gun to his head and said, "You need to go. You need to leave right now and don't come back."
Get more Disappeared online at investigation.discovery.com. The Jamison family has been missing for 14 days. But now, a recovered surveillance video leads investigators to suspect a drug connection in their disappearance.
We felt that there was a possibility that Sherilyn and Bobby had been doing methamphetamines or other drugs by their behaviors on the video surveillance.
It can come in a powder form. It can come in a crystal form. They like to call it the redneck cocaine.
Some sort of drug connection could possibly help explain the bank bag with $32,000 found in the Jamisons' truck.
In this area, you find that much money, automatically you start to think about drugs.
But the Jamisons' friends and family believed that connecting them to illicit drug use is both wrong and unfair.
I don't know anything about having drugs or any of that. People jump to conclusions. They don't know what's happening.
I feel like a lot of the things that could be helpful in this case are almost being used to make them seem like druggies or whatever, and they weren't. They weren't at all. Everyone is speculating as to what were they really doing up there. Well, they were looking at land. It doesn't mean that they were up to no good.
Family members can also explain the seemingly suspicious array of surveillance cameras on the house. Bobby's mother says they had nothing to do with drugs. The cameras were installed for personal reasons involving her now deceased husband.
Surveillance cameras put on the house for protection. My husband had threatened me several different times. He also threatened my son and Sherilyn. And I had the cameras installed. I'm the one that did that. I also had a security system put on my house because I was afraid. And it's hard to live through life being afraid.
FBI agents conduct a thorough search of the Jamisons' house and property.
There were no traces of methamphetamine in the home or in the vehicle.
As far as I know, the FBI did not find any drugs.
Investigators are unable to make a clear connection between the Jamisons' disappearance and drugs. But delving deeper into their personal lives, police uncover information that could explain some of Sherilyn's apparently erratic behavior.
After meeting with Sherilyn's mental health provider, we learned that she suffered from bipolar disorder and that she had been struggling for many years with the condition.
According to friends and family, Sherilyn didn't always stay on her prescribed medication.
It's a hard thing to accept that you have to take medication to be normal the rest of your life. She would do what a lot of depressed people do when you start feeling good because of the medication. You're like, oh, I'm good now. And you get off the medication and then you're worse off because your brain's trying to catch up.
I mean, she was like two different people. When she was taking her meds and taking them properly, she would be the happiest person on earth.
Sherilyn's condition could explain some of the more unusual writings in her journal, including the hostile letter written to her husband that police found in the Jamisons' truck.
When she would go in the other state of her bipolarism, she would be angry, hateful, belittling herself.
Sherilyn didn't write a word unless she was writing what was going on in her head. And that's why the journal was so disturbed.
Despite Sherilyn's sometimes erratic behavior, investigators believe that her bipolar disorder played no part in the family's disappearance. According to friends and family, her illness and Bobby's chronic pain did create enormous tensions in their marriage. But they looked at moving to Panola Mountain as a second chance at happiness.
They were trying to make a go of it. They were trying to get back together. And I think they thought if they moved up there, they could, just start a new life. My son loved her very, very much, as well as he did his daughter, and she loved them back.
By November 1st, the family has been missing for more than 3 weeks. Investigators are stumped.
Most investigators would love to have the amount of evidence that we have. And the problem is that it leads us in every which direction.
Then, just when they are running out of angles, a stunning new lead surfaces. Police learn that a few months before they disappeared, Bobby and Sherilyn took in a boarder.
There was an individual that was living with them, and this individual was there to help work on the residents.
Because of his chronic back pain, Bobby thought having another set of hands around would ease the burden on both him and Sherilyn. But according to friends, the border began to make Sherilyn uncomfortable when Bobby wasn't around.
Sherilyn and Madison both felt very threatened by this fellow who had been staying with them.
Investigators learn of one incident that was especially disturbing to Sherilyn.
Bobby had left to go somewhere, and the man that was staying here sat down next to her, real close, and put his face right in her face and said, you know, I'm a white supremacist, and you keep talking about all this Indian blood you have. And I think anybody who's not pure white needs to die.
Sherilyn takes Madison away and returns with one of Bobby's guns.
She was scared for her child, and Bobby. And she pointed the gun at the guy and said, get off this property and don't come back.
Sherilyn fires live rounds near the border's feet to drive him away.
She's really torn up about that. She felt really bad about it. I mean, she was crying to me, telling me this and saying, I've never held a gun to anyone before.
Investigators learn that the man has an extensive police record.
Obviously, this person became a great interest to us.
If you threaten someone and then they make you leave at gunpoint, that's a pretty big indicator that you might be wanting to retaliate.
The FBI launches an investigation to identify and track down the former border.
The FBI felt that he quite possibly could have brought them harm.
Coming up, investigators zero in on the Jamisons' border. What does he know about their disappearance?
This isn't a random crime. This is something that was premeditated. Somebody knew they were going to be there that day, and they took advantage of that.
Bobby and Sherilyn Jamison and their daughter Madison have been missing for 3 weeks. But the investigation into their disappearance is finally working with a solid lead. Police learn that a month before they disappeared, a live-in handyman allegedly threatened Sherilyn's life. She forced him to leave their home at gunpoint. His current whereabouts are unknown.
We found out all the information we needed about the individual.
Investigators learn the border's name from a prescription bottle found in the Jamisons' truck.
We put it out to the U.S. Marshals.
U.S. Marshals find the man living in Wilburton, Oklahoma, and detain him.
U.S. Marshals tracked him down, and the FBI did interview him.
In the interview, the former border is able to account for his time during the Jamisons' disappearance. The FBI doesn't consider him to be a suspect. Investigators again find themselves back at square one.
I really don't know where to go from here other than each time that we get a lead, follow up on the lead.
Friends and family believe that despite the crushing challenges in their lives, the Jamisons were planning for a brighter future until something or someone got in their way.
They were trying to love each other the best they could, you know? But knowing all of that now, it really makes me sad because they didn't get that chance to start over fresh.
Over the weeks and months that follow, investigators check out each and every lead that comes their way.
There's a rumor of them being in trouble with, whether it be organized crime or just small-time gangs or crimes. That is all rumor. And we don't know any of that for a fact. But we can't get rid of that. So it's still there.
But the rumors don't lead to a break in the case. The FBI doesn't currently consider anyone to be a suspect in the Jamisons' disappearance.
At this time, we have no suspects. And until evidence comes to life to show differently, there are no suspects.
Sheriff Beecham believes it's probable that the Jamisons were kidnapped or taken by force. He just doesn't have the evidence to prove it.
Because of everything being left in there and the way the vehicle was parked, they got out of that vehicle after they were trying to leave the location because somebody had drove up there. Somebody had drove up there and blocked their path.
It's so rural up there that you wouldn't just cross paths. This isn't a random crime. This is something that was premeditated. Somebody knew they were going to be there that day, and they took advantage of that.
Whether they made them leave by gunpoint, force, or they got in voluntarily, I don't know. And what happened from there, I don't know. But that is my current theory on what had happened.
Both family and investigators are frustrated by the magnitude of the mystery surrounding the Jamisons.
Most of the time people will tell you, and I hate saying it, but you need to find bodies, whether alive or dead. To usually solve a case like this, you need the bodies.
Right now, we just need everyone's help in finding them and locating them, because not knowing is very hard.
I've used more resources than most people have ever used in the state of Oklahoma to try to find somebody. It's a small department. It's a small county. There's not very many people around here. Everybody talks about it now. Every day I hear, did you find that missing family yet? Did you find them? And no. That's my only answer. You know, it messes with your confidence. There's no doubt. Not being able to solve such an important case.
Perhaps due to the lack of new leads, media interest in the Jamisons' disappearance outside of Latimer County has slowed to a trickle.
Even right now, whenever I ask someone if they know about this family, a whole family that went missing, they have no idea what I'm talking about.
In the meantime, Bobby, Sherilyn, and Madison's family remains desperate for answers.
It's hard to put yourself in the family's shoes. I've never had this happen to me, and I couldn't imagine it happening to me. And it must be the toughest thing you could probably go through in a lifetime.
We've already had 7 months go by. The search has gotten kind of cold. I've gone through so many scenarios in my head. If they can help me find my kids, I'll do anything. I want my kids back.
To help the case, if anybody does know any information, they need to give us a ring. We need it. We're begging for it. If you know where they're at, tell us.
You know, I would sell my left limb if somebody would come forward. If somebody would just say something. Anything. Because for as many people that there were out there that didn't like them, there were twice as many people who loved them. And we need closure. They didn't deserve this.